Welcome to Courtney on Health, brought to you on malcolmpresents.com. And I have a new thing. It's the portal to the new world. Anyway, welcome, Courtney.
Well,
Welcome,
hello.
Maxine, and welcome our special guest.
Hi, Marianne.
Thank you.
Max,
So-
take us into the show.
I will, since you already said hello, I'll say hello to Courtney and to Malcolm and to
That's
Marianne.
redundant. You don't have to do
And
that.
to Marianne. I'm going to say it anyway because it's from me. So welcome to Courtney on Health, a Zoomcast podcast series which focuses on one's overall well-being with tips on nutrition and exercise given by Courtney Ravanese, registered dietitian with a Master of Science degree in nutrition and applied physiology. Courtney is an experienced nutritional and health consultant in the New York metro area. And as we say, beyond, there's a lot of beyond out there. Lots beyond, and will help guide you on a path to wellness and health. And again, we want to welcome Marianne today, our special guest, Marianne Santee. So we're in the month of October. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, an annual campaign by the National Breast Cancer Foundation to raise awareness about the impact of breast cancer. The campaign for 2022 is called Rise Up. When we raise our voices together, we help spread the word about the importance of breast cancer screening and support. We need to rise up and help reach even more people through the Breast Cancer Awareness Month by sharing their messaging on social media and various other channels. The more outreach about the need to have more women get a mammogram, the more likely that early detection will help save lives. So Courtney will give us some important info, and we have, as I said, a really special guest, Marianne Santee, who is a breast cancer survivor who will tell her story and give us some background from her perspective. So Courtney,
Yay.
I'll turn this over to you to get things started.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, Marianne. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story with us. So aside from being my neighbor and my friend, Marianne Santee is mom. She's a marketer. She's an entrepreneur. She's a runner. She's a two-time breast cancer survivor, born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago, and went to school at Washington University in St. Louis, where she earned a degree in economics. She met her husband after college back here on the East Coast in New York. And she, along with her family, live in Westchester County, 2 kiddos, Melina 12, Luke 10, and I can vouch for the extremely cute Frenchie, the dog, Coco. He's a very cute, pooch.
Sparkles of vouch for Coco too.
Yes.
Okay.
She is passionate about trying new recipes. She's active. I see her buzzing around constantly, finds purpose in helping women who are newly diagnosed with breast cancer on their specific journey. So we're thrilled to have you join us today. And like Max said, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Many people hear about this every year. It's always a good idea to reinforce to women of all ages the importance of early screening, early detection, early diagnosis, and knowing what your risk factors are. So before we talk to Marianne, I just wanted to quickly, for those of you who are listening or watching, you may know this information already. If you do know it and you have a woman in your world who you think does not know it and needs to hear it, please share so that you can help support her in identifying those risk factors. So aside from being female, which is one of the obvious risk factors, although men do get breast cancer as well. 1% of men are diagnosed each year with breast cancer. Family history of breast cancer, certainly. A gene mutation. Most people have heard about BRCA1, BRCA1, BRCA2, maybe not so much PALB2. It's the mutation in these genes. You should be or need to be tested for that in order to determine that is a risk factor. Early onset of your period, late menopause. So again, early onset period, late menopause. Can you control these things? Absolutely not. So these really fall under the world of things that are unmodifiable, but important for you to know as well. If you've never had children before, or if you had your first child after 30, is to a certain extent a risk factor. And one of the most potent risk factors would be early radiation exposure. And what I mean by early is in your 20s or in your 30s. Some women have to have radiation, high dose radiation, for certain diseases for their treatment. So we know those are, these unmodifiable, uncontrollable risk factors. The lifestyles that have been well studied to date, obesity and being overweight, particularly with a BMI of over 30. If you are you're drinking alcohol, and we've talked about alcohol intake on this show before. So it really, right now, if you don't drink, and you are at risk, they're suggesting that you don't drink at all. But one drink a day is pretty much where the recommendation is, if you do drink, to really cap it out at that one drink a day. And then smoking. Particularly for women who have been smoking for greater than 10 years, that appears to put them at greater risk than women who have been smoking for less, or women who smoked for a short period of time and then managed to quit. So, get that message out there. It's important to know those. But Marianne, I really want this to be about, you are you're an inspiration. I have to say that. So you said that there's no topic that we can't talk about. So I'm just going to dive right in there. So could you share with us a little bit about how you found out about your breast cancer diagnosis?
For sure.
Was it a routine mammo? Did you find it on your own?
Yeah. And Courtney, thank you so much for, first of all, enlightening all of us. I think if you know it, it bears repeating for sure. And, as I've gone through this journey of breast cancer, I keep thinking, I'm like, gosh, I feel like breast cancer awareness should not be limited to just the month of October. And I would encourage everybody to go further than awareness and take action. So it's not just a once a year, once a month, once a year thing. Women should be testing or just screening themselves once a month. And, I'm happy to share information on what to look for, how to do a self-exam, but that should be happening on the first of every month. So that's just my little PSA plug for that. But as far as how I found out, it was through a routine mammogram. And I started getting mammograms a little bit younger because my mother had breast cancer. She had breast cancer post-menopause. I am much younger than she was when she got her diagnosis. And it was really during the thick of COVID. December 2020 is when I got my diagnosis. And it was at a time when people weren't really following through with their doctor's appointments. And I remember being like, gosh, I really want to cancel this appointment. It's COVID, it's cold. Nobody likes getting a mammogram. No one likes getting a mammogram in the cold. So I really came close to canceling it, but I'm glad I didn't. And so it was detected through a routine mammogram. And I will also say that I have dense breasts. And so for me, it's not just a mammogram, it's an ultrasound. And that I think is also very important as well. So I found it through, a routine mammogram. And to your point, early detection is a game changer, because I often think, gosh, if I had rescheduled my appointment for, a few months later, 6 months later, my, whole medical treatment could be different. I could be in a different place right now.
Okay. As a man, and I know nothing about the, really very little about this, were there any indications to take a mammogram? Did you feel any lumps, or you just did it as you didn't think anything was wrong and you just took a test?
Yeah, I will admit I was pretty casual about doing self-exams. And as somebody who also, as I mentioned, I have dense breasts, it's hard to feel, what normal lumps are and lumps in general. And so I'm very grateful, to have pushed myself and listened to that voice in my head that was like,
I have the same thing with, dense breasts. I need the ultrasound. My mom had post-menopause. She had breast cancer. And they did find something once for me that luckily was benign, and they removed it. But the whole situation is, I know the mental state of that alone for me completely freaked me out.
Yeah.
And to be able to then, I mean, how did you then go through, after you found the diagnosis, and then what, what did you do from there?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, I remember every slow second of getting
Mhm.
the phone call and the moments after. Um, that's something that like it feels like you're in a movie, right? And it
Mhm.
feels like it's like not happening to you, and it's like this is not
I
happening
bet.
to me. This happens
Yeah.
to somebody else. But the truth is, 1 in 8 women get diagnosed with breast cancer. So that means like basically every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer, which blows my mind. Um, but different from many other, I would say like illnesses or diseases, like I think breast cancer is one where the mental, emotional part of it is very much tied to the physical component of it. Um, and so for me, like my journey of getting to a good place mentally was life changing. And so once I got my diagnosis, of course, everything is spinning and you're literally drinking from a fire hose, like trying to understand things that I'm not, a biologist. I have no experience past like, you know, grade school science really, and you're trying to learn all of these things that are being, spewed at you
Thrown at
in a
you.
very short
Yeah.
amount of time. And at the same time, you're also trying to like grasp the fact that you have just received a diagnosis of cancer, which is like just a huge punch in the gut.
Mhm.
And so for me, I decided that I was going to take, some time off of work. For a lot of people, like the distraction of work is extremely helpful. It's like, let me just continue going about my life. For me, I was like, I need to like keep my head from spinning and I'm going to take some time off of work and just kind of like refocus. And so I took, and I will say this, I will preface everything I'm going to say, in this podcast with, I am very blessed to be in a position to have health insurance and all these things because, for many women, this is not the case. And so, I took 8 months off of work, to get through treatment, to kind of physically and mentally get myself into a good state. But I am so grateful that I took that time off because it changed not just my life, it changed like my family's lives.
Excuse me, on a practical level, now that you're diagnosed, what is the next step?
Well, she has to go through that story. And she will.
Okay.
All right. There's a little yes, go ahead, Marianne.
She has a very unique
I'm
story.
impatient.
So,
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
There's a
you'll
plot.
hear it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
But I think probably like the emotional journey probably started after my first round of chemo. So for me, I had to get 8 rounds of chemo and 30 rounds of radiation for my particular type of cancer. And as you can imagine, like prior to chemo, like I was terrified. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how I'm going to feel. I don't know how long I'm going to feel terrible for. And as you would expect, I felt pretty terrible after the first round. And chemo is not the kind of thing that gets better over time. It gets worse because it's building up in your body and it's cumulative. And so for somebody who's active, I'm a mom of 2 kids, so that alone keeps me busy. But then on top of that, I enjoy, to your point, Courtney, like, running and being active outside and exercising and things like that. And so staying in bed was really a difficult thing for me to do. But after my first round, I probably stayed in bed for a few days, feeling terrible. I felt like I got hit by a truck. But I remember waking up one morning and being like, oh my gosh, like I don't feel nauseous. I have an appetite. I don't feel like I got, punched in the face. Like, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, what happened? And I realized I'm like, this is what being healthy feels like. This is what I would feel like every other morning prior to getting a cancer diagnosis. Like,
right.
and I was like, oh my God, like I feel amazing. I'm so happy and grateful. And so, Courtney, I decided, I was like, that morning I went and I ran 10 miles. like,
Oh man, wow.
and it was because I could, and I was like, I can move my legs. I'm mobile. Like I'm breathing healthy. I'm, so grateful for all this. And so for me, it was like it perpetuated this cycle of like gratitude, and I decided from then on, I was like, I have a very limited time until my next chemo round, before I get, hit in the face again. Like, what am I going to do to be happy and find joy and, take advantage of the fact that I have time off of work and, physically and mentally get myself together. And so I really used that time. And for somebody who is also a mom, like, you don't always think about yourself. And so this was like the first time I got to like think about myself in a really long time. And I'm like, what makes me happy? What brings me joy? And it turned out to be very simple things like running and spending time with my dog and my kids and gardening and
Marianne, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second because you said something that I think you guys know that I worked for many years at Memorial Sloan Kettering and specifically the Breast Cancer Center. And what you just said right there about as moms, and I would even argue as women in general, even if you're not taking care of your own kids, taking care of somebody else, it always tends to be, let me take care of others first, me second. And I can't tell you the countless women with whom I worked, my patients at Sloan Kettering, that they waited, they pushed it. It wasn't their time. They took care of their husband, their kids, their everything else. And that pushed back their diagnosis. So when you said that, it really resonated because I feel like that happens more often than we know.
Well, it's even true with, I took care of my mom for 10 years, in her 90s to 100. And that in and of itself as well, I wouldn't go to certain doctor appointments. I wouldn't do things, that I would need to do to keep myself healthy. And it didn't put me in a good place because I wound up with a ticker, problem. And then I wound up with this nodule thing as well in my breast. So yeah, it's tough. And so Marianne, I mean, just to be able to get to that place to realize you need to take care of yourself as well as the family is important. Women need to know that.
Right. But, and to that point, and it's very difficult, I know, for women, to take care of themselves and put themselves first. But I would say going through this like emotional journey of like being happy and grateful and taking care of myself. It wasn't like I was, using my free time to like meal prep for my kids. Like, like I'm not doing that. That's not fun. Like, what ended up happening was like, I was really happy during this time. And my husband, Brian, was like, this is really, I'm going to say something totally weird. He's like, I know you have breast cancer, but I have not seen you this happy in a really long time. And it was because I was taking care of myself. But as a result, like my kids were happier, like, because I think gratitude and happiness are very contagious, right? And as moms, you tend to be like the center of like, it's like you're an octopus, right? It's like you're taking care of like your kids, you're taking care of like your career, you're taking care of like the house and everything like that. And everything kind of like, oftentimes, whether or not it's fair or whatever, it like comes back to you. And so I found that like, as I fueled myself and made myself happier and, did the things that brought me joy, it ended up benefiting everybody around me.
Interesting.
So, and you have a unique, so you finish your chemotherapy, you finish your rounds of radiation, you're in a good space for a while, and then take us through the next phase.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, let's get back to work and, let's get back to life as usual. And I'm moving on into my second chapter and like taking on this new like lease on life and everything. And I'm having a conversation with somebody at work and, kind of bringing her up to speed, like, hey, like, I just, went through all this stuff. And she's like, that's amazing. And she asked me, so she's like, are you okay now? And I'm like, yeah, I think, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I think. But it's like, it's your health. It's not like you're getting a graduate degree. Nobody hands you a diploma saying, congratulations, you finished cancer treatment and you're cancer free now. There's no guarantee, right? And so this very casual like hallway conversation stuck with me. for several weeks, so much so that it was bothering me. And so I called my oncologist, who you know, Courtney, Dr. Dang, and I was like, I know this sounds crazy. I just finished chemo, like, and 30 rounds of radiation a few months ago. And by the way, I just had a clean mammogram in November. And this is like in April. I was like, but can I do an MRI just to like make sure and just to put my mind at ease and like, let's just do this and I can move on with my life. And she's like, yes, let's do it. And so I had an MRI and she calls me and tells me I've had a recurrence. And I'm like, my mind is blown. My mind is absolutely blown. I cannot believe what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
And neither can she, to be honest with you.
Because that would have not been status post like chemotherapy, radiation, and lumpectomy, an MRI, and tell me if I'm wrong, that would not have been a normal test that they would have done as quickly after your treatment completion as you requested.
That's right. And it was, and to your point, Courtney, this was me pushing my doctor or me asking I didn't have to push that hard, thankfully, because she's amazing. But it was me like having this feeling in my gut where I was like, I just want to make sure, you know? And so that's, you know, I went through and I requested it myself. And, you know, to be your own health advocate is like another thing that I wanted to like, just, you know, share with people is that, you know, no one cares about you and no one cares about your health as much as you do. And so you know, you can have the best doctors in the world, and I do have the best doctors, but they're also doctors to like 1,000 other women, right? And so you need to be like that squeaky wheel if you feel something is off or, you know, just not right, to say something, because it's life-changing. And you're not being annoying and you're not, you know, being paranoid or anything. You're taking control of your own health, which is important.
So what are your next, if you don't mind sharing with us, what are your next steps from here? How are you feeling, first of all, and what are your next steps from here?
Yeah, so once I got the news that I had a recurrence, the protocol from there was having a mastectomy. And so I opted, because I'd gone through this twice, to, instead of having a unilateral mastectomy where they just removed one side, I had both removed. And so that was in June of this year. And so I opted to have reconstruction. And so reconstruction is a pretty long phase. And so I have one more surgery ahead of me next month. And, you know, I'm also on like hormone blocking medication, which is like, so my cancer is hormone positive. So it feeds off of the estrogen that's in my body. And so I'm taking medication that suppresses my estrogen levels and basically tricks my body into being in menopause. So I'll have my surgery next month and continue taking my medication, which is called tamoxifen, probably for the next 10 years.
My
And tell me about the
sister-in-law
support.
has that
Yeah.
same, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
it's,
she had that same thing. Yeah. And she's 7 years clear. Just wanted to say that.
yeah.
So as a positive note to that.
Well, tell me about your, so two sides to this, your support structure, like what you really found, like if somebody's listening out there, it's like, what, and again, I know this is very individual and every woman is going to have their separate journey and how they respond and how they deal, but what would you share about those things that you found most supportive and most beneficial for your support? And then the second part of that question is, the rabbit hole of the internet and social media. You get a lot of conflicting, a lot of personality on there. And how did you turn either, I don't know, maybe you didn't turn it down, maybe you dove right in, but how did you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess to answer your first part, as far as like support is concerned, you know, for me, well, first and foremost, like I turn very much to my family. I have a very supportive husband. My family is very supportive. My friends are very supportive. I also did something that is not like me to do. I decided to like really share my journey on Instagram. And I found a lot of support through that. A lot of women, I actually met a handful of women who are now, I would call like internet friends, I guess. They're also breast cancer survivors. similar in age and life stage as me. I met them over Instagram, but for me, a lot of it was like sharing what I was going through with others. And I did that as a very selfish act, I think, initially. But what happened was that people were coming to me and being like, you know what, thank you so much for sharing your story. I made an appointment to go get a mammogram, or I went to, go do this doctor's appointment, like that I've kept pushing off. And so I was like, you know what, if I can remind you to get your mammogram, or if I can remind you to do like a self-exam, like that's amazing. So, my support network, I found actually through social media. And then I found another group called the Breasties. And I actually went to an
I
event.
love that name.
Amazing. I went to an event 2 weeks ago, an in-person event, and that, again, not like me to like put myself out there and go to an event alone. But I was, what is there, like, I'm gonna go with like another 100 women who've been through what I've been through. Like, what's not to have in common, right?
Yeah.
So and so I met some really amazing and inspiring women, through that event. But to your point, Courtney, there's a lot on the internet, and there's a lot, of things that are scary out there. And it's easy to go down this rabbit hole of, and I know I did this, where I first got my diagnosis and I started Googling everything and was terrified. And so I think once you find your team of doctors, you put your trust in them and you do what they tell you to do, because that's, the hope is that you hire a great team, and you hire a team that you implicitly trust.
Right.
And you don't have to look anything else up on the internet, right?
Right.
That's what they're there for. So
From listening to your story, I'm very not inspired by you, but very I admire you for number one, for your courage, and number two, for looking the situation as it is, taking care of it, and number three, for not letting it get you down, for not going into your own self with depression, but continue your way of life. And I see that you have an exercise bike in your house, and I see that you're into running, and I see that you're friends with Courtney, so you must be getting back into shape and just saying, this is one aspect of my life, this is it, I'll keep in touch, I'll watch it, but it's not going to change my life.
yeah,
I am still Marianne.
Yeah.
So I
100%.
admire you for that.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say one thing, because I think there is like no shame in this at all. And as far as like support network is concerned, is I also had an amazing therapist that I spoke to during this time. And, what I'm so grateful to see, especially nowadays, is like more discussion on like mental health and the importance of it. And I would say, like, many years ago, it was not something that we all liked to talk about, but I'm also very open with the fact that I was talking to a therapist for a while, especially during, my journey through, cancer. And she was extremely helpful.
That's important. That's such a big part of this, because even my little scare was just like, what, it just goes in the back of your mind, and what if this comes back, and it's it's just something that now I need to get, like, by December, another exam, and I need to get doctors in order, because some of my the doctors, they go away, and then you need to find other ones, and then you can't get your tests when you need them, all these things that you need to navigate. And then so many people are, navigating so many things. And Courtney sent me one of the things that she sent in an email. She said that you became a yoga instructor. Oh, you're going to mention that, Courtney?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, in
What
all your free time, Marianne.
I mean, what? What is that about? It's like,
Yeah, so it was actually, it wasn't because of the diagnosis. I actually decided to do this probably right before I found out. So it was again during COVID, and I think I just needed something different. Like, it was like I needed something to break up, the working from home and everything like that. And I just felt like I needed a challenge too. And so I was like, what am I going to do to kind of like push myself? And I was like, why don't I do this yoga instructor, the teacher training course? Like, why not? And it was and then as I was applying to do this teacher training course, that's when I found out that I had my diagnosis. And like, I cannot say enough good things about having gone through that. Like, I'm not actively teaching, but being a student again, being in a position where I'm like still feel like I'm learning, going somewhere like every weekend, was really helpful, like getting out of the house, like meeting with
A
other
purpose,
women.
a mission.
Having
something to
purpose
focus-
is,
yeah.
that's exactly right, Courtney. And, also like, sometimes you kind of just have to you have to fake it till you make it, right? Like, if I was feeling like absolute crap, I'm like, okay, like, put on your big girl pants and like get in the car and go to class. Like just go out and, do it.
But
Um,
anyway, guys, hate to tell you this, but our half hour is up.
I forgot to warn you, Marianne. He brings out the hook. He's a taskmaster at that 30-minute mark.
well, I mean, I can talk about this forever, but
If
thank
you
so
want,
much.
I would love to have you on again. If Courtney, if you want to arrange it with Courtney, because I love your attitude. I love the attitude is that you took your diagnosis, you hit it head on what you had to do, and you didn't let it change your life. It's now part of your life that you watch, but you're doing all your activities with the same positive attitude, and that's marvelous. And I think if more on any illness, whether it be a women or men, if they would take that attitude, it would it would be
Absolutely.
a better world for them.
Yeah.
But anyway, take
Yeah,
us out,
just
Max.
I just wanted to say that there's a website for National Breast Cancer, which is nbcf.org. Is there any other places quickly where you can send people to get info, Marianne?
Yeah, again, like if you look up the Breasties, that's a great resource. It's a great resource for meeting other women who are in the same boat as you. If you're looking to donate and support, BCRF is my favorite breast cancer nonprofit. All their money goes to research. And also, like, I'm happy to serve as a resource for your community as well. So
That's
I'm
great.
going to post it when I post the segment. I'm going to put a bunch of resources. Maybe Marianne, I know Sloan Kettering has a great resource page for either high risk or women who've been diagnosed. American Cancer Society. There are lots of resources. And Marianne, I thank you so much for joining us today, and really helpful, I think, for everybody to hear this message. And no matter where a woman is in her journey, or man too, I have to say, we want to make sure we're not forgetting the men who are diagnosed with this. There's support, there's help, and however you want to approach, there'll be a support system and a scaffolding there for you in order to get that support that is so severely needed.
Absolutely.
Just a final thought. I don't know whether they have support groups, but you would make an excellent speaker, motivational speaker that would, if there were any groups, that there are a group of people.
The Breasties are one of them. So yeah, I guess.
Well, anything. It doesn't matter what the malady
Any
is.
group,
It's
huh? Okay.
Surviving.
And
not letting, life get you down, whatever your, a disease or malady is. You take it by the horns, you take care of it, and you go straight ahead with your life. And again, it's very impressive.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for all your story and info. And it's a pleasure. I always like to see you walking down the block. There was a couple of months I didn't see you, and I was a little nervous, to tell you the truth. Now I kind of know why, but you're amazing. And Sparkles is here listening, and she's sending out vibes to Coco also. So I'm going to wrap. Thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. To get more info, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, which is Courtney on Health, on Instagram at CLG Wellness, and on TikTok, and visit her website, CourtneyGravenese.com. For more shows, go to MalcolmPresents.com, theManyShadesOfGreen.com. This has been Courtney on Health, smart, sound nutrition, strong, safe fitness, and we will catch you again next time.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much.